Hello again, everybody. Saturday afternoon at Lawrence, Kansas, the Texas Tech Red Raiders just stomped the Kansas Jayhawks 65-19. We're here to tell you about it in a RedRaiders.com post-game show brought to you by University Medical Center. I'm Don Williams from the Avalanche-Journal. Next to me, as always, AJ Media Sports Editor Nicholas Talbot. And Nick, today Texas Tech comes up to Kansas and just absolutely takes care of business. And there are so many Red Raiders do so many good things in this one. It's hard to know where to start.
Yeah, well, I think I know where I want to start. So the two things that you wouldn't expect from the Red Raiders, at least not in years past, the running game and the defensive line play. But yeah, the Red Raiders ran for 313 yards, which is the most since 2012 when they ran for 325 yards against New Mexico. So that's a great performance. Career-high game, 161 yards from Justin Stockton. A 4-touchdown performance from Desmond Nisby, who really did it well in the red zone, Don, and then had a 47-yard run as well. And then the defensive line play, Don, which really kind of dominated this game and really helped Texas Tech do what it does this year, which is force turnovers.
Yeah, a couple of things kind of jumped out at me. The first half, the defense was really on the ball to start with. At the beginning of the game, first two series, Kansas got the ball into Texas Tech territory just inside the 50, and then 4th and 1 plays back-to-back. Deshaun Johnson with a tackle for no gain, and Desmond Smith with a tackle for no gain to turn the ball over, get the ball back to the Red Raiders. The offense clicked. Then the Kansas third series, Tech's third defensive series, if you will, Kansas actually makes a first down. They review it. There are a few of those today, and they said, no, you didn't make a first down. It's a yard short, and so they force a punt from the Kansas Jayhawks. And then in the second half, defense sets the tone again. I think in the second half, his defense is just getting their hands all over the football. Eli Howard got his hands on the ball 3 times, batted a couple of passes. One of them was actually a deflected pass. Kansas guy caught it. Another one was one batted down. Another one was tipped, and Justice Parker intercepts it.
Who had a huge game.
Justice Parker had a huge game. To stay with the theme of the defensive line, though, Colin Hill had a huge game. A lot of folks were kind of asking me on Twitter, what's wrong with Tony Jones? Why have we not seen more of Tony Jones? And I'm not sure exactly, but Cliff Kingsbury said after the game, trying to reward guys who are really practicing well, trying to bring Colin Hill along. He had a great week of practice, got a lot of snaps today, and he made the most of them. He was very visible today, made a ton of plays. You touched on it, though. Justice Parker, a guy that kind of came out of nowhere. People really didn't know, had never heard his name, and when he started emerging in spring, and David Gibbs at the end of spring practice told me one day, he said, this guy's going to play half the game. He's that good. He said, I would have repped him last year, but he's a transfer, so he had to sit out. And, man, he made a couple of plays in the first month on third down, but today was kind of his coming-out party.
Yeah, to say the least. He had a 25-yard fumble recovery, which is scoop and scored at a very key time, too, Don. That was right when Kansas, I think they had gone field goal, touchdown to come back in the game.
To get it to, 35-19?
To get the game back to 35-19. Justin Stockton had just, had fumbled after they were getting back down there. And then all of a sudden you get the scoop and score, and the game starts switching again. Because the next possessions are, I believe, fumble, interception, punt, and then another fumble. So, and that really kind of set the tone for the rest of the game and kind of started to break it wide open. Later, he was the one who had the interception, though. So he had 2 turnovers in the second half that really just kind of put the gas pedal on when they needed it, which is something we haven't seen from this Texas Tech team, Don. They didn't finish off Houston. I mean, they won these games, but they didn't really finish them off very well against Arizona State and Houston, let them back in. Kansas, they just clobbered them in the end.
Yeah, and I don't, it's dangerous to make too much of a victory against Kansas because you should beat Kansas and you should clobber Kansas. So we'll try not to make too much of a big victory against Kansas. But with that said, I think the conversation we're having, I think we're kind of illustrating that the defensive improvement that we've talked about, and maybe this also is a little bit true of the offense as well, this team has more personnel that it can count on and better depth, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. Because you think about it, Douglas Coleman did not play today. He had an ankle injury. He was over there on the sideline in uniform, but he didn't play. He had an ankle injury. You didn't miss him because he's your nickel back. The reason why you don't miss him is because Willie Sykes can step in and start for you, and then Justice Parker doesn't start and has the huge game. At the rush-in position, Tony Jones has been the guy who's kind of getting everybody excited. He doesn't play a lot today, and Colin Hill has a huge game. Eli Howard is not a starter, and he has a big game. flip it around, offensive side of the football, Derek Willies has had a rough last couple of weeks, had a bunch of penalties. So they sit him today. He didn't start, and Quan Shorts goes and scores a touchdown for you to help you build that early big lead.
Yeah, he did. He had a really nice catch. I mean, he was even surprised how wide open. He said he was just yelling at Nick, throw me the ball, because Nick had scrambled out a little bit, got some pressure on him. He tossed the ball down there, and he backpedaled in the end zone, not even knowing where he was. So it was a really big play for Quan Schwartz, and really good to see him kind of breaking out. We kind of questioned where he was after, he had a big touchdown catch against Baylor, and then one against Eastern Washington, and then nothing since. Today, he comes back out and has the best game of the season so far.
Yeah, and so it's good for these guys because I think if you have a player here, a player there that doesn't really have his head in it and has a bad game or doesn't practice very well during the week, you can do more than it's more than an idle threat. I think that, hey, we got another guy who can take your place. Today we saw a guy take 3 or 4 different players' places. We didn't mention, cornerback. And cornerback's kind of been a rotation all season, but we saw almost none of Jalen Lane today. But Desmond Smith was back in the starting lineup for the first time since game 1. And again, Desmond Smith was one of those guys who made an early big tackle on one of those 4th and 1 plays to get the ball back. So we saw some good depth, which is good for this team. Let's talk a little bit about some of the numbers. You answered one of the questions already. 313 yards rushing by the Red Raiders.
Sure is a lot
of
yards.
Most since 2012.
Yeah, against New Mexico when they went in for 325.
And I'm not sure. Here's another thing to research. I don't know the answer to this one. Nick Shimonek, or actually just the passing game in general today was 22 out of 27. I'm curious where 27 passes rank among fewest attempts for the Red Raiders in the air raid year. And when's the last time they've had less than 30?
And they ran the ball 52 times.
It's got to make you happy, SEC guy.
That does make me happy to see them running 52 times. And they ran the ball well, which we had talked about them coming in. Outside of the 2 big plays against Houston where Justin Stockton had an 84-yarder and Trey King had a 73-yarder, this Texas Tech team was averaging 2.74 yards a rush. Today they come out 52 carries, 313 yards. They establish the run game. They do well with it. It's not all big runs. They get the 8-yard runs, the 7-yard runs that they really need to have a strong running game. Granted, yes, it is Kansas, but Kansas had struggled in the secondary more than anything this year. Their run defense wasn't that bad coming into this game.
Well, and here's another thing to think about. Khalil Herbert, we talked about him a lot this week, Kansas running back. He had 137 yards 2 games ago against Ohio, and then he had 291 yards in Kansas's last game against West Virginia, who is Texas Tech playing next Saturday.
Yeah.
West Virginia.
West Virginia.
If Khalil Herbert goes for 291 against West Virginia, Texas Tech does this today, maybe some optimism that the Red Raiders might be able to run the football against next week up there against the Mountaineers.
Yeah, because
they lost a lot of personnel off that defense.
And Herbert wasn't even that effective today. He had 10 carries. I mean, he had 10 carries for 65 yards, which is a good average, but it took him
45 came on 1 carry.
Yeah, 45 came on 1 carry. It's kind of like what Texas Tech had been doing, one big thing to help the average out, and then about 2 yards a rush thereafter. And the Texas Tech run defense has been very much improved this year, which I think when that front is solid up front, it's just made that defense so much better all the way around. And it just starts up front, Don. And we touched about it early, but that's the biggest improvement for this defense for me because it's just let it go all the way through.
Yeah, well, and I'm not sure if we mentioned it, but when we were talking about all the takeaways today, Dakota Allen also with the early interception. That's his 2nd interception this year, I believe 3rd interception by the linebackers. And what is it now, 14, I think, takeaways for the team?
14 takeaways, and I think they had 13.
Last year they had 13.
So they're already 1 ahead of last year, and I believe that makes them plus 9 in the turnover margin, which should put them in the top 5 in the country at least.
Yeah, one thing now we hadn't talked about, again, you don't need it when the score's 65-19.
You're going to bring up the negative, aren't you,
against West Virginia and Iowa State and Oklahoma these next 3 weeks.
And who would have thought Iowa State was going to be this good?
How about that?
Just a segue over being Oklahoma today. But, yeah, they're going to need the kicking game. And today they struggled. After Clayton Hatfield's gone out, they have struggled to figure out who is that guy, whether it's Michael Barton, whether it's Uten, or they even
Matt Cluck.
So, it's been a lot of guys. And what are all the problems today? It started off with a bad punt by Dominic
Panzella, and that was not really on Dominic. It looked like Kyle Heffron gave him a good snap close to waist high, and he just dropped it, took his eye off of it maybe, and winds up getting off a weak, partially blocked punt, and then the kickers catch the pucks. You had let's see, a missed field goal from 43 yards. That's not the worst thing in the world. An extra point that gets tipped still goes through. 2 kickoffs, I believe, out of bounds.
Yeah, and a missed extra point.
Yeah. So again, when you win by 46 points, no big deal. But when you go to West Virginia and Iowa State comes to Lubbock, and you go to Oklahoma, those 3s and 1s and being able to get 40 yards out of your net punting, that's going to be important. And again, second week in a row that they've had the punt game bite them because Dominic Panizzolo had the one blocked last week by Oklahoma State.
Yeah, so that's like the one negative thing that we can take away this game, obviously, is Kansas. So you kind of wonder where the bar is, but Texas Tech did exactly what they needed to the day, Don. They came in, they played defense, they forced turnovers, they shut down Khalil Herbert, and they ran the ball.
Well,
pretty good all-around game.
Well, I mean, there have been plenty of times that I've come up here to Kansas where Tech was playing Kansas teams that you thought, Tech will beat these guys easily. And they won, but it was not easy. And today,
2 years ago,
Patrick
Mahomes was 30-20.
Yeah.
And they had to hang on to defensive effort with Deshaun Johnson. That was just 2 years ago. And these teams were kind of in the same place they are today.
Yeah. So, again, final score today from Lawrence, Kansas. Texas Tech 65, Kansas 19. Red Raiders go to 4-1 overall and 1-1 in the Big 12. Next week, it's on the road again for another 11 a.m. kickoff, Texas Tech at West Virginia. Stay on RedRaiders.com and LubbockOnline.com because Nick and I are going to go write columns right now and have a notebook, game story, things that we're talking about, and all manner of stuff between now and next Saturday. So we appreciate you reading and we appreciate you watching as well. This has been a RedRaiders.com postgame show brought to you as always by University Medical Center. Thanking our producer, director, Brad Tollefson. For AJ Media Sports Editor Nicholas Talbot, I'm Don Williams. Take care. We'll talk to you again soon.